Hello, everyone. It is December 7th. It is 2024. A couple nights ago, I went back to my local dive bar. I met up with a couple of friends. I'm leaving in a few days, so it's a good opportunity to say my goodbyes, so long farewells to each and every one of them. We got to sitting down, we had a couple beers, and we started reminiscing about days past. And one of the gentlemen who kept on coming up in our conversation was a guy named Leslie. Leslie was a mysterious, interesting human being, and I'm going to tell you absolutely everything I know about this man of mystery. Anyway, we would always sit as a group. We would typically sit outside on the patio, and Leslie would sit next to us, and sometimes he would interject himself within our conversation. So ultimately, we would invite him over. He's more than welcome to have a couple beers with us, talk to us, so on, etc. It got to the point where we were pretty friendly with him. He really liked to talk about his job, how important he was. Apparently, he had moved from Georgia and taken a job as like a general manager at a car dealership, and he was moved here because he needed to set this place up straight, set them up for success because they've been having problems apparently. Cool, man. It was good listening to him. He didn't talk about much else, but one night he came and he saw us talking outside. We were talking politics. Now, within our group of friends, we never really talked too seriously about anything. We could just kind of take everything with a grain of salt. We always kind of laugh about things, and we poke fun of absolutely all the Republicans and all the Democrats. Again, it's just a fun session. It wasn't really anything serious at all. But Leslie was very frustrated. You could see it on his face. He came in frustrated. He came in upset. Sounded like he had a little bit too much to drink as well, but he asked if he could sit down with us, and he wanted to talk politics, but he wanted to be a little bit serious. You see, he was upset about woke culture. He felt, in his opinion, things have gone a little bit too far. He was very concerned because it seems like nowadays you could put someone's name out there, you could put their face out there, and you can label them whatever you want without any fear of repercussions, and you could potentially really hurt that individual. You could hurt them from getting a job. You could ruin their reputation in a lot of ways, especially if it comes up during a Google search. So I completely agreed with him. I said, yeah, for sure. I see what you're saying, man. People could theoretically use that against you when it's not true. And he wanted to talk about a very stressful situation that was ongoing at his work. He said he got called in by Human Resources. He had currently 3 complaints from 2 individuals, and both of them claimed that he was a racist. And this really hurt his feelings. He said he felt it was completely unjustified, unwarranted, and it's difficult because he's just getting to know them and they don't really know him quite yet. But he assured us all that he really isn't a racist. He may or may not be. I have no idea. But he had mentioned, when I talk to my employees, I'm very straight up with them. It could come off a little aggressively. It could come off a little bit condescending. It's something I'm working on, but I've been in the military for most of my adult career, and I'm very accustomed to taking orders in that fashion. I find that it is something that helps me expedite things, and we're able to get things done, and communication is clear and concise as possible. And he's all about accountability, and he wants to develop a relationship with his fellow coworkers where they could come and talk to him in such a manner as well, and he will give them all the information they need. It was a 2-way streak, according to him. Again, I don't know, but he was very upset. We got to talking, and the conversation changed, so on, etc. But Leslie, man, he was still in a bad mood. He was still stressed out. I kept on trying to reassure him. I was like, Leslie, everything will be all right. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding, Leslie. And he was like, yeah, okay. That's kind of how he sounded. It was like a southern accent, like he had this interesting look to him. He looked just like a Humpty Dumpty drawing. So basically an egg with like spaghetti legs and spaghetti arms. But he kept on talking to us, and he found out what country I'm from. Half of me is from. I'm multi-ethnic, and the country that I'm from is from the Middle East, and they definitely don't have the best relationship with the United States of America. And he got really frustrated. Like you could tell his face was red, and he was like, "One of your people shot me right here." I had to get up on a aircraft carrier and engage with these people in a speedboat. I had to shoot them down, get them away from the aircraft carrier. I was called up there along with the other Navy SEALs. I was a Navy SEAL. I'm retired. and we got rid of them. They took off like the cowards they were. But I almost lost my life. If it was like a few like centimeters deeper, it would have gone right through my brain. And I got up, it knocked me down, but I got up and I started exchanging gunfire. I mean, I was a madman. And I thought that was like interesting. I said, so they just called the Navy SEALs up? They were like, yeah, they made some kind of announcement. We just all ran up on deck. We know what to do. And it just kind of sounded like he was describing like a scene from a movie or something along those lines. And I said, it's pretty interesting. I had no idea. Wow, I didn't even know that happened. He was like, yeah, it happened. It went on the news, blah, blah, blah. But I took him for his word at that moment and kept on talking, kept on drinking. And then he talked about how he's been shot 3 times, not including this one, but 3 times here. From 2 different people, and he's been stabbed a total of 5 times. So he has a Purple Heart, and he started going down this laundry list of awards and accolades he had received from the military. Me never serving in my life, I'm very naive to this, so I don't really understand. My 2 friends sitting next to me, they are like kind of nodding their head too. They don't really know what he's talking about either, but we just kind of listen to him goading about his many, many, many accomplishments. Ultimately, he left because he had been drinking a little bit too much. And I talked to my friends, and I'm like, hey, guys, because they were like, man, how about that Leslie? He's really like out there tonight. And they were kind of talking about his service. And I said, I think he served in the Navy because he seemed to know a good amount about the military. I, however, don't believe that he's a Navy SEAL. One, his physique. He wasn't that old, but his physique just didn't look like it was capable of doing the demanding task that Navy SEALs can typically do. Most Navy SEALs kind of look like Spartans. But I do understand that maybe he was a stud, maybe he got injured, or sometimes you will see an athlete that doesn't really look very athletic, but they are. So ultimately, I used to wrestle, and occasionally you would see someone who didn't look athletic at all, but they're just a beast. There's something about them. They're able to pull things off you wouldn't believe. And I said, hey, I would bet amongst all the Navy SEALs, there's probably a few guys like that as well that probably you wouldn't think they're Navy SEALs, but deep down they are the badasses. So I thought maybe that was the case, but I said, what really has kind of put me off, gentlemen, is he pointed to this divot in his head. Again, I'm not in the military, but I have worked in the medical field for quite some time. I'm not a clinician, but it looked like a natural divot in his head. As a matter of fact, he kind of had another one on this side as well. He could have used either side as a bullet wound. It just looked like the natural formation of his head. He made me touch his little divot, and it just felt like a little regular bump that a lot of people have on their heads. I have a ginormous one right here. Thank God I have this fantastic head of hair to cover it up. But I was like, man, that was natural. There was no scar tissue there. And then also talking about how he got shot and stabbed all these times, he really wouldn't elaborate on it. And everything he was talking about, the theater of war he was bringing up, really did sound like a theater. I wouldn't doubt that he stole some of the ideas from a movie, whether it be like The Lone Survivor or John Wick. It just sounded really out there. It sounded almost borderline unbelievable, feasible, but it didn't really seem that way. But I started looking into him at that moment. Another friend of mine came about. His name is Joe. I knew Joe was in the Navy. So I go, hey, Joe, has Leslie told you he was a SEAL? And Joe was like, yeah. And I said, Joe, I'm going to just put this out there right now. I don't believe that he was a SEAL. Do you have information pointing to that maybe he was? And he was like, he mentioned my name, and he was like, no, he was, I don't believe he was a SEAL at all. Joe actually served in a combative, he was in the Navy, but he served on the ground combatively. And he wasn't a SEAL. He never would he really talk about any of his military accolades. He would just say, hey, I was a combat vet. But he started pointing out the inconsistencies within Leslie's story. And he said, I believe he was in the Navy for whatever period of time, but I definitely don't believe he was in the Navy SEALs at all. I just haven't felt like calling him out because it didn't really seem appropriate to do it at this particular bar because we're all about peace, love, and happiness here. I started talking to other people, and one of my friends, she is absolutely gorgeous. She actually made this guy a whole meal, home-cooked meal, a big, gigantic meal. And she was saying, well, he came up one day and he was crying and he was talking about how he was a Navy SEAL, which she didn't know about, that he was, had PTSD, that he really no one appreciates his stories, and people are starting to call him a liar. So he was very frustrated and sad about that. And he was just saying, I'm just trying to serve my country. Or in his voice, I'm just trying to serve my country. Anyway, she made him a meal, and she felt all bad about it. And I said, hey, I don't think this guy's the real deal at all. I think he's a con man. I think he's a true con man. I talked to his landlord, who would frequent the bar as well. She was actually in the Air Force. And he said, hey, Leslie, I just feel like this guy's a con man. I think we need to excise him from our group. Do you have any information on him? And she was like, no, I mean, he's pretty quiet. He kind of comes in later on at night after he comes to the bar. My kids are asleep, I'm asleep, so he hasn't caused us any real issues. But one thing that's a little bit weird, he paid his first month of rent, but he said there's a delay on his paycheck from work, and he hasn't been able to pay his rent in about 4 months. I said, that's interesting. He worked at a car dealership, and that was kind of his story. He was a general manager at one, as I stated. So anyway, I see Leslie about a couple weeks later. I'm like, hey, Leslie, how's it going, man? How's work going, man? Everything okay? Everything cleared up? Any issues? And he was like, man, I'm over the whole racism accusations. I think I'm A-okay there, but I have another thing that came up. And he was like, my license for car selling, there's issues with that apparently. And he became very frustrated. It seemed like he was acting. He was like, my brother, he has tried to steal my identity multiple times. And it seems like he's trying to do something with my license here. And it's causing a huge hiccup as far as payment, so on, etc. And as of right now, they've asked that I do not come back to the dealership until this is cleared up. So I was like, man, that sucks. And he was like, well, it sucks because I'm not getting paid, even though I didn't really believe him. He was always spending a lot of money. So anyway, that was the last time I talked to him. I talked to his landlady, and apparently he left, sight unseen. He didn't say anything to anybody. He was just up and out of there. The next day, they didn't see him. They didn't know what happened to him. She was worried about him. She tried to text him. She tried to call him. It seems like she was blocked from his number. So she looked him up on social media. She found him, sent him a couple messages. She got no response. So she was concerned. She found out who his brother was via social media, and her brother immediately called her and said, I need to speak with you. And he warned him against this guy. And he said, listen, my brother is a con man. He's going to probably try to steal stuff from you, or just don't give him any money. And she mentioned that, hey, he's been living here about 4 months rent-free, and now he's not here. And the brother said, I highly doubt that you're going to get paid. He has this continuous thing where you'll go through a town and move to another one, so on, etc., and you'll kind of use these sympathy stories of him being a Navy SEAL to get that trust from people. This is called a confidence trickster. They speak to you about something you may have little and less knowledge about. They seem like they're an expert, and they kind of wow you with their stories. So you could see, if it was a legit Navy SEAL, that maybe a lot of people would have sympathy for this person that is down and out, and maybe would want to help them get back on their feet, whether that's hooking them up with a job interview, or, hey, come live with me for a little while, we'll figure out rent later, so on, etc. But that was a game his brother said he continuously plays, and he had just come out of Georgia, and he had ripped a woman off, a girl that was in love with him, of about $150,000 to $200,000. So I'm looking through Leslie's Facebook profile, and unfortunately I didn't get his full name. I'm going to try to do that now, though. But I'm looking through and I see a picture of him with a girl who looks out of his league. Any girl really looks out of his league. But apparently this was a girl he ripped off for all that money, left her high and dry, and he's just on the road. And he just blocks people's phone numbers. He goes on to the next victim. He's very predatory, his brother says. He just doesn't have it in his heart to have any sympathy or empathy for absolutely anyone else. He'll burn you and he won't care about it. He's on to the next con. I said, man. And we asked if he was a Navy SEAL, and his brother said, to my knowledge, no, he did serve in the Navy, but it's very difficult to get anything out of him. And his brother doesn't talk to him any much at all anymore. And he doesn't push any buttons because he'll know he'll get thrown out of his life. So everyone kind of like turned to me, after I started talking to people, and they're like, man, it seems like you were right about this guy. He was a complete con man. And I said, I really don't believe he's a Navy SEAL, because it just seemed, I can imagine there's con men in every single job. But it just seemed like with his physicality, his lack of intelligence, and his cons, I don't see he was a Navy SEAL. And that's what he uses to get his foot in the door everywhere. His job, his girlfriends, his money. I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm just having a little bit of a difficult time. But don't you worry, things are going to turn out A-okay, because, again, I can persevere when others cannot. That's what SEALs do, I can imagine. Anyway, that's my story about Leslie. Hopefully I'll get his last name, and maybe I could send him over to somebody who can either verify him or just shut him down completely. Just take that story away from him and expose him the way he deserves to be exposed. But I do have a feeling Leslie is smart enough to know when someone is on his tail. So I would think if he got a call from somebody and they sounded somewhat professional, he would say, Navy SEAL? No, I served in the Navy. Con people? No, I've never conned anyone in my life. I think he is already onto that. Like, I think he's perfected the game so much that he knows exactly when to step away and cut himself off. I think he knows when he's being set up, because he relies on this con. It is his livelihood, unlike a lot of other people that just do it to get chicks or maybe like military discounts. This is his livelihood. He does this to get money and everything else that goes along with it. And apparently he's doing a pretty good job. Man, imagine having $150,000 from someone. That's life savings, man. That's a lot of freaking money. I'm just sad that he probably ruined a lot of what was good in that lady's life. And, it's sad because, like, moving forward, she probably has severe trust issues with men. It's sad. I hope she gets her money back somehow. His landlord, she really didn't want to bother with it. Everything was already such a headache. She was like, whatever, screw it. I'm better off without him. My landlord also is pretty well off. So it didn't hurt her nearly as much losing that money. But that's the story. That's the story of Leslie, a legend within our dive bar, a complete, utter, total con man. Anyway, have a good one. Bye.